The best
in the world
is right here, right now.
Whether you like it or don't like it, pal, learn to love it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
welcome.
All right, listen up.
Now it's our time to step forward. It's time to bring the NWA back into the spotlight.
I was thinking that it might be a good idea if you and I formed an alliance.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Attention, everyone. Welcome to the greatest wrestling program in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? Stop what you're doing and listen.
It's the Alliance Guys podcast with your hosts Kevin Fraiser, DKM, and JCap.
All right, guys, welcome back. This is the Alliance Guys podcast, and with me are my two chums, my pals, my friends, my confidants, former World Junior Heavyweight Champion Kevin Fraiser and my man DKM. Welcome, gentlemen. It's nice to see you guys in your friendly faces.
Woo, look at this hat, baby. We'll be talking about this on 2 shows.
I mean, you're talking about that hat, but what about this hat? Available now
Hey.
at Alliance Blog merchandise.
Oh, that is. Hey, I'm gonna have to get me one of those. I'm gonna have to have one next time we do a show.
We'll try to make that happen.
When you're as pretty as I am, you don't need a hat.
You know, I was thinking the same thing about you, DK. I was thinking the same thing. Man.
So, if you guys remember, it's been a while since we've done an Alliance Guys podcast, but we used to showcase the stars of the National Wrestling Alliance. We would talk about the NWA as well as recap the weekly NWA Power episodes. It's been a while since there's been an episode of NWA Power, so we've decided to switch gears and start recapping the United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live. Of course, if you haven't seen these episodes yet, you probably don't want to watch because we're going to spoil the heck out of it. If you are considering watching these shows, you can order them on Fight, $7.99 an episode, or you can get the 4-pack for $23.99. That'll get you episode 1, episode 2, and then 3 and 4 will be next week. And we'll talk about 3 and 4 next week, because this week we're going to talk about episode number 2. Yeah, the next 2 weeks. Thank you. Next 2 weeks, of course. So we are talking about the Primetime Live. Now, this is the signature program for the United Wrestling Network. United Wrestling Network, other programs include Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, the CW30 in Memphis, also Championship Wrestling from Arizona. Now, this is the consorted effort of the Dave Marquez Machine Studios Company, whatever you want to call it, and his group of producers and staff have worked hard to create a new program, not unlike the TNA Impact Wrestling model when they first started on the weekly pay-per-views. One of the highlights of this show is that it cross-promotes with several different wrestling organizations. Of course, the aforementioned Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Championship Wrestling from Arizona, but also West Coast Pro Wrestling, which is based out of Northern California. It also works with New Japan Pro Wrestling's LA Dojo, which of course is based in Los Angeles. Then we also have the National Wrestling Alliance, as well as a lot of free agent talents have been coming by to work with this group. And this week was no different. A lot of stars showed up for Primetime Live. You know, Kevin, as a former wrestler, what do you think of the concept of a weekly pay-per-view series like the old TNA pay-per-views? And what did you think just on the surface of what this is?
I think that having a weekly pay-per-view is awesome, especially if you're trying to generate revenue, drive revenue, make money, pay the wrestlers. I think that's awesome. I think having some form of free product to put out there, maybe a match a week on YouTube, something to pull people into the show would be helpful. But again, I'm all about not giving away too much for free. So unless you got paid advertisers that are telling you to do that, I think it's a great idea. The other part that I was immediately impressed with, and if you talk enough wrestling with me and what I like to see on shows, the production value was just outstanding. The studio looks super clean. The ring looks awesome. The stage looks awesome. Just all of it. The lighting is incredible. if you're a wrestler and you're getting to work in that type of environment, I'm not surprised. If I'm a wrestler right now, I'm that's one of the places I'm trying to get to so that I can look my best. You know, you spend all this money on ring gear, you work out, you tan, you do all this stuff, unless you're the one guy from the show this week. But even that, you know, I mean, if you whatever your look is, I mean, this is the best way. You're going to be in high definition with high resolution cameras. You know, I think that until live audiences start coming back in terms of in droves in the thousands to shows, there's a window of opportunity for every wrestling organization to put themselves at a level of the World Wrestling Entertainment, AEW, and again, who better to do something like that than Dave Marquez, an awesome producer, a guy who loves wrestling, a guy who loves TV, and again, it's just his passion doesn't just show in his emotion as an announcer, but it shows in like the quality of detail that every time he's a producer on the show, you know it's his show because of the high quality. So I was really impressed with that part of the show for sure. And we'll talk about the wrestling talent, I guess, as we go on.
And DK, now I know you saw the first episode, and this is your second offering. Now this show is a lot better in terms that there were no technical glitches. But overall, what do you think of the United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live? What do you think of the look and feel of the show?
Well, look, anybody who knows me knows I'm a skeptic. Don't get my hopes up too high for anything. It was kind of the same going into this. I wasn't really sure. Of course, there were all sorts of rumors about how much it was going to cost, and a lot of them were high. And so I didn't really know what to expect. I was very happy when they announced the pricing structure. I felt, you know, the price per episode around $8 is certainly a fair price. The bundle package, I hope they offer more. That's what I got. It put it down to about $6 or so a show. And as Kevin pointed out, very slick, very nice looking, very well produced. There were some technical glitches that had absolutely nothing to do with the United Wrestling Network, Dave Marquez, NWA, or the talent that was on the show. The first one, basically, it would just freeze, and you know, we missed a lot. There are a couple of missed camera angles, but let me tell you what I liked about the show, both of them, and that was it was a damn good wrestling show.
Agreed.
I mean, and for those of you who don't know, I probably watch more wrestling than any of these guys here are in some of my chat groups. Not long ago, I took the week and I watched every wrestling show there was. I watched Raw. I watched SmackDown, NXT, AEW. It was when WWE did 2 back-to-back pay-per-views, you know, week after, one week followed by the next. And I watched Impact, actually, something I hadn't watched in a long time. And so I can tell you that the vast majority of what I watched was a lot of crap. And Impact had a couple of good matches. NXT is neither bad nor overly exciting. You know, you can see some good talent on there and stuff like that. But both the first one, from what I was able to watch without much problem, and certainly the show we're getting ready to talk about, damn, that's wrestling there.
All right. I love to hear it.
And and I think that's what Marquez was looking for. Episode 1, technical gaffes aside, and maybe some pacing issues, they still tried to pack wrestling into that show. I mean, from pillar to post, from hour to start to finish, it was packed with wrestling and promos. It didn't seem like they tried to put a lot of filler in there. And I think as a wrestling fan, I can appreciate that because I'm plunking down my hard-earned money to watch this show. And if there's a lot of, drama, a lot of storytelling that's outside of the ring, I really feel that that's taken away from the product. So, I mean, the one thing that you can salute the NWA or Primetime Live, United Wrestling Network on, is that this thing was packed with wrestling on both episode 1 and episode 2. Now, we're going to specifically stay with episode 2 because, well, episode 1 is already a week removed, and we're here, we're living in the now. And, I mean, let's be honest, this episode was highlighted by probably the most hottest thing in professional wrestling today, and I'm talking about Thunder Rosa. I mean, we're talking about a champion who's defended her title now in All Elite Wrestling. She challenged Sheeta for the All Elite Wrestling's Women's Championship. She's now made 4 appearances for the show, and I think she made 5 appearances for the show for AEW, and that's saying quite a bit. In between, she's wrestling in Chicago against Kimber Lee. She has Lindsay Snow coming into her promotion, and they're wrestling for that women's championship. She defended that title 3 times in 6 days. That is a champion. That is a fighting champion. And it seems like everywhere you go, when you hear people talking about wrestling, you're hearing people talk a lot about Thunder Rosa. Kevin, I know we used to talk about Thunder Rosa on Power as the hottest thing in Power. But my God, what is she doing right now? What are your thoughts?
Well, okay, so I didn't know anything about the card going into the show. I just, I knew we were going to talk about it, and I went in honestly just because I know it's Marquez and I know it's his show. I went in with high expectations for production, but I had an open mind about the wrestling because I just didn't know. And then when I find out it's going to be her in the main. I was really excited, and I just thought, what a great person to have on your show when you're really trying to get a kick start. And from like what DK said, from the beginning to the end of the show, you had guys and girls in there wrestling hard. There was, like I said, there was storytelling in the matches, but a whole lot less stuff outside of it. And I think that was something that I know I was really pleading week in and week out on our Power reviews. I was asking for more wrestling. Like, give us some wrestling. The rest. I mean, it's funny because me and Jay off the camera, we joke about baseball, and we're both big baseball fans, and obviously DK is too. But but no, a lot of times, when I'm watching these games and they're piping in fan noise and they're doing all this extra stuff, and I'm like, the game's fine. The game is fine. Like, I'm good with hearing the crack of the bat, the pop of the glove, the players talking trash. I'm good with the game, and I feel the same way about wrestling. Sure, the fans aren't there. I get it. We all know what's going on right now, but wrestling is still why we are watching, and to get solid matches, solid finishes. Not a bunch of riffraff. I mean, did I just say riffraff? Anyways, not a bunch of not a bunch of stuff that's just not. It was a relief. It was a lot of fun to watch. Just fighting, wrestling, some people going in and going after it. And again, I'm sure we're gonna rave about this main event for a good while because it was 2 women that really went out, and I could care less about how fancy the moves were. About halfway through the match, I'm going to give them some leeway because they're working so hard. I know they're tired. But all that being said, I just felt like they were just fighting it out. There was red marks on both of their bodies by the end of the match. That's just what I like when I'm watching some wrestling. So
they got to wear those scars and those injuries on the skin. DK, real quick, do you want to give us some more feedback before we get into the show?
Hey, look, I'm going to make it plain and I'm going to make it simple. Thunder Rosa, right now, is arguably the best wrestler in the business. Hear what I said there. I didn't put any conditions on it. I didn't put any genders on it. Best wrestler in the business. She's a draw. I pay money to see Thunder Rosa.
Right. Hey, I think we should camp here right now because I actually agree with you, DK. When I'm watching her midway through the match and just watching her confidence just the fact that you just know that she knows what you're saying. And because there's an even playing field right now in the world of wrestling, I think if you're the United Wrestling Network and you're in the National Wrestling Alliance, you have an opportunity right now to seize this and really capitalize on it. Because I really agree with DK right now. I would say if there's anybody's match, I'm gonna take time to sit down and watch for 20 minutes. It's gonna be Thunder Rosa.
I mean, we're all saying the same thing. The hottest professional wrestler in wrestling today. I don't think you could even argue it. And if PWI was doing their top 500 right now based off of the last week, you have to put Thunder Rosa number one. I don't care who you think is better. Thunder Rosa is your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler. Episode 2 kicks off with a series of promos, and I really think that's a great way to introduce some of this new talent that, again, the United Wrestling Network, depending on what the fan base it's kind of hard to decide where people are coming from. Are they NWA fans? Are they fans of the United Wrestling Network with their programming? It's kind of hard to tell. But this is a great way to introduce some of the talent to people who might not have ever heard of them. Now, Thunder Rosa obviously needs no introduction. She's talking about her Destruction Tour. She successfully defended her championship against Eva Lise on AEW's Dynamite. She had a victory over Kimber Lee at the Warrior Wrestling in Chicago. And on the 12th, a successful defense against Lindsay Snow. I mean, all this leads to tonight. And again, she's not going to be pulling anything back. And she kind of mocks Priscilla Kelly's, sob story that she's been crying about whether she was ever going to get to wrestle again. But I think it's a great way to introduce this audience to Thunder Rosa in case they hadn't known her before. Then we get to Priscilla Kelly. Her promo is quick and to the point that you can beat her down, but she won't give up. And I mean, we definitely see that in this matchup. The other point I wanted to make out is that Priscilla Kelly did have one match before this one, leading up to her return to professional wrestling. She wrestled the Dirty Daddy, Chris Dickinson, the week before in an intergender match, and as brutal as he was last week on United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live, it goes to show you how tough she is. Now, another thing I want to point out, too, is that Priscilla Kelly was trained by Murder One of the Usual Suspects, the former NWA Tag Team Champions. So if you wanted to question her mettle and see how tough she is, I mean, her pedigree, her learning tree is coming from somebody who's actually a pretty tough dude. Next, we get introduced to Slice Boogie. I'll be honest, he comes from my backyard out here in SoCal, but I didn't know a lot about him. He is the 2019 SoCal Uncensored Rookie of the Year, trained by the Santinos. Kevin, I know you know all about Joey Chaos and the group that they've seemed to produce out here at the Santino School. What were your thoughts on Slice Boogie's promo telling Carl Fredericks that he isn't some young lion that's going to get beaten around?
Well, it wasn't a bad promo. It made me want to see the match. And, one thing is to get in there and talk the talk, but in that match, he walked the walk. And I think that was the big part for me was, okay, you're going to get on here and you're going to tell me how good you're going to be, but are you going to go out there and deliver? What I would say too, since we're talking about the promos, I thought Priscilla Kelly's promo underplayed how good she really did in the match. I feel like in her promo, she should have gave herself a little bit more credit because I felt like she wrestled way better than her promo made me think she was going to. So, again, this is constructive because, again, it's a compliment. I mean, her stuff in the ring was really way better than I thought. I'd never seen her wrestle before, and it was way better than I thought. And when I heard her cut a promo, I thought, well, she's almost setting herself up to just get beat up out here. But both promos are pretty good to me, and I enjoyed it. What about you, DK?
I like the promos. Again, didn't know much about Slice. Boogie Bob Slice, I don't know. Don't like his name. But it was a little weird to hear. I'm not a you're not going to treat me like one of the young lions, but then he was also rookie of the year, and
Yeah.
just recently. So there was a little bit there. As Kevin said, it made me want to see the match. And, we'll talk about the match when it comes up. But, it did what it was supposed to do. It made me go, that might be an interesting match. That might be a good match.
And shortly after that, we had Carl Fredericks, who is going by the moniker the Alpha Wolf, which I don't even know what that means. But now here's a guy who has been under the tutelage of Shibata at the LA Dojo. And this guy's transformation from where he was just a few years ago to now competing in New Japan Pro Wrestling, both here in the United States and in Japan. He's gotten really, really good. He's had a few matches in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, but of course, this is the big debut on Primetime Live. And he more or less says, I'm going to beat you like you owe me money. And we'll get more into that in a minute. And of course, the last of the pre-taped promos, we had Eli Drake making his United Wrestling Network Primetime Live debut in a match that would be sanctioned by the National Wrestling Alliance, taking on a friend. And what's interesting is that they kept pointing out on the broadcast is that he and Watts had never stepped in the ring toe to toe before, and that there is a real life friendship outside of the ring, but that's the first time they faced off in a match, and I thought that was pretty interesting. Kevin, what were your thoughts?
Well, Eli Drake on the microphone is always something you want to see. Definitely justifies any money you're going to spend. And it just was one of those things where I was excited to see it. I'm always up for two big heavyweights standing toe-to-toe and beating the crap out of each other. So knowing that was going to be a match that I would see, I was very excited about it.
DK?
Look, Eli Drake, Thunder Rosa, two very good promos. Eli Drake, one of the best promos around. I was already excited to see this match, so I was happy with what we got.
So all those promos, we didn't even see a shot of Danny Limelight or Kevin Martinson, which is kind of silly to me because you have all those promos. But all the same, we got Danny Limelight, who I've interviewed on this podcast, on this channel before, taking on Kevin Martinson, better known as Johnny Goodtime from his days with the Rock Nest Monsters, or Vermin, or however you want to remember him. And this was a match that I was very excited to see because, first of all, these two have this way of, I want to say there's no wasted motion. When they're wrestling, it seems like they find a way to inflict damage by just moving around. And I think nobody's better at this than Kevin Martinson, BHK. But both of these guys really relied on high-flying, high-risk, high-reward type wrestling. This is the kind of wrestling that I really dig a lot. And I thought this match was pretty phenomenal. As it went back and forth, they spilled out to the floor. They battled on top of the stage. Again, a lot of high-risk moves, including Danny Limelight's symbiote DDT, that Kevin Martinson reversed that into like the Northern Light suplex. There was so much action, so quick and so fast. DCam, I know you're a fan of the junior heavyweights. What did you think about this match?
I really enjoyed this match. I thought it was very good. It was action-packed. Again, wrestling. We saw wrestling in this match. We saw hard-hitting in this match. They were two of the smaller guys that we've seen on the show, but they don't come across as teeny-tiny guys.
No.
They still come across as wrestlers, and they come across as strong wrestlers, And so this type of junior heavyweight action I like. And, Kevin, what's his last name? Masterson, Martinson?
Martinson.
Yeah. I was always a fan of the Rock Nest Monsters, and I thought that this is probably, he looked better here than I've probably seen him look.
Yeah.
And he's just, he's kind of come into his own in a way that I have not seen before. And I was very impressed. And, again, wrestling, man, these guys did it.
Well,
Kevin,
I felt like, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as a former junior heavyweight champion, I mean, how would you feel stepping into the ring with two guys that presented themselves like this?
Well, I really, obviously I know Kevin Martinson from my time with Championship Wrestling. Always admired what he did in the ring, what he brought to the ring. Always admired, and I have even followed him since, even since I retired from the ring. And I always admire a guy that will change and can change successfully over a period of time and still be relevant. So I felt like that's something he's done. When I'm watching junior heavyweight wrestling, I know the moves are going to be there. I know the athletics going to be there. It's almost like you're going to play with the heavyweight wrestling. A lot of times it may be too much story, and then sometimes with the junior heavyweight wrestling you don't get enough story. And so I felt like the moves were awesome. I felt like it was like so hard hitting. I really enjoyed Johnny Limelight. That's his name, right?
Danny
Limelight.
Yeah.
I figured I got it wrong. I got the Johnny Good Time, but I really like him. I really think he has an it factor about him. Just I don't really know. That's why it's the it factor. But I really, that's why it's the it factor, is because there's really no way you can just put a finger on it. But he has that, and there's a certain charisma about him. Obviously, we know Kevin is a veteran wrestler. I feel like that's why he's in this feud, is to kind of bring something out of, bring the best out of Danny.
Yeah, Danny. Danny Limelight.
I'm going to get it right eventually. Danny Goodtime, Johnny Limelight. Anyways, no, but I really like the action. Now, I would say, considering there was a grudge match factor about this match, there could have been a little bit more of that. And again, once we move to the next match, you'll see what I'm talking about when you see some of the play back and forth between Eli Drake and Watts. We needed a little bit more of that to make some of the just brutality that we got in this match mean a little bit more. But that'd be the only thing. Like DK said, like, it was wrestling. These guys got after it. And frankly, I'll take more of that than the other. Than them talking the whole match, giving me a bunch of replays of last week. Like you called, Jay, like filler stuff. I mean, the wrestling part, if you're in it for that, it was definitely that. A little, probably could have switched this match with the Slice Boogie, right?
Yeah, Slice Boogie.
Could have switched this match with that match, just because this seemed more like a semi-main event type match. I mean, the stuff they were doing, you could have put a little later in the show and it still would have carried it. It would have carried a little more weight. I felt like this match and that other match could have probably been swapped. But you're talking semantics here. I mean, who's complaining? Because it was really good to watch some wrestling.
You said brutal, and I think that was a very good adjective to use to describe this match, because it was brutal. And speaking of brutal, we have our... What's that?
A good brutal.
A good brutal. A good brutal. Speaking of
brutal.
Speaking of a good brutal, we have an announcement for next week's pay-per-view, and that will be the Third Degree Mongrovian National Champion, Aaron Stevens, taking on Trevor Murdoch. Now, this match was supposed to happen at the Crockett Cup. And although we didn't get to see the promos on TV, there were a lot of promos that were recorded leading up to this match that, again, never made air date because of the changes to the programming that they had due to the COVID-19. And what an exciting matchup to me. Trevor Murdoch, speaking of brutal, taking on Aaron Stevens for that national heavyweight championship, and I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys are too.
Oh man, so excited about that match.
And one thing I also want to point out is this is the first storyline to carry over from Power onto Primetime Live. And I think that's important because there's so many people who are clamoring for Power. Oh man, I miss NWA Power. Oh man, I wish Power was back on. But this is the closest thing you're going to get right now, and that's Primetime Live. They're bringing in the stars from the NWA as we go through more and more on this card. There's NWA action here. There'll be NWA action next week, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. There's going to be a continuation of the NWA here in Primetime Live, but this is the first feud, first storyline that immediately transferred right over from Power to Primetime Live. So I'm definitely looking forward to that match. You guys have
Speaking of NWA, the next match is, I'm trying to segue here.
Beautiful. I love it.
Ah, come on.
We get the first.
Can I do it? Can I do it?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Speaking of the NWA, in the next match, one of my very favorite guys to watch on the mat, off the mat, on social media, I don't care, is Eli Drake. Man, talk about him, Jay.
So, okay, now this is a matchup of two former Hollywood Heritage champions. For those of you guys who don't know, Eli Drake spent quite a number of years in championship wrestling from Hollywood. In fact, you were in that Battle Royal, the Red Carpet Rumble, where he won the Heritage title. Kev, you were there. You were part of that.
Toe-to-toe with that, man. And honest to God, that was probably my favorite. Well, me and Manimal getting to, double team half the roster of Championship Hollywood was a blast. But getting to, trade some shots. As soon as I saw him get into the ring, I'm like, that's just my style. I'm going to go after the best guy in here. So I got to trade a few blows with him. And again, just like you would expect, as all great wrestlers, when you get in the ring with a guy like that, it brings up your level, takes you to levels that you probably wouldn't go to otherwise. So yeah, big props. And then of course Darth Watts, a personal friend of mine, just an amazing guy and someone who I believe so much in his talent. And so getting to see two big heavyweights talking trash, circling around, big nasty lockups, I love that stuff. And very physical. So this was when I saw this was going to be. I didn't have popcorn, but if I'd had some, I'd have been sitting there just ready to go. And I'm not going to lie, I did rush through the show a little bit, but this was the match that caused me to be late for our recording because I had to watch every detail. I had a few rewinds on this one. It was I really enjoyed this match.
This was the match that I thought was going to outdo the main event. Of course, Thunder Rosa, Priscilla Kelly really took things to the next level. But I thought this was going to be the match that was really like the showstopper. And then that's even after the first match that we had. But DK, what did you think? Watts versus Drake. I mean, there was signs of like the respect, the mutual admiration, the handshake in the beginning kind of gave me those Ring of Honor feels. And the match just kind of spiraled kind of into I guess like a grudge. But DK, tell us what you thought about the match.
This is storytelling in the ring, this match. This is what wrestling's supposed to be. I mean, we all know Watts is a huge man. You see Eli Drake next to him, you realize how big Eli Drake is, because he wasn't that small next to Watts. Mm-mm. And so, Eli Drake was the one that liked to come out on Power and talk about all the grown men that he saw there in the NWA, and this was certainly the case. You saw two big, intimidating men.
In shape.
Which is where I was going. They have the bodies, they have the look, they have the attitude. Eli Drake has the charismatic personality. Watts has that dirty scowl that, just makes you kind of freeze in place. They start out, there's that respect, like you said. They get going. They start beating each other. They wrestle. They fight. They get at it. At some point, you think they really are trying to hurt each other. And then there's also a story here because Watts had just recently lost the Heritage title. So he's looking for some form of redemption here. Has a very strong ending. And then Eli pulls it out. And I like that it was a sudden ending, but it wasn't a fluke ending. It wasn't just, here's a roll-up out of nowhere.
No.
Drake hit him with his move. He pinned the man. It was a match. Jay showing us a blurry picture.
Well, that's a picture of me and Watts in China standing together, and I'm like a few steps ahead of him, and he still looks like a giant compared to me.
I thought it was you and a midget. So, anyway.
Close enough.
Yeah, close enough. So, anyway, man, how could you not get excited watching that match?
Right.
How could you not be a wrestling fan watching that match?
And I think one of the hallmarks of this episode is that everybody looked good. Even when they lost, they looked good.
With one exception.
With one exception. Yes, with one exception. But I mean, when you look back, when Kevin Martinson won, did we not all just find a new respect for Danny Limelight? And when Eli Drake won, it wasn't a foregone conclusion that Drake was going to win the match, but didn't Watts just look didn't he look like a winner even in defeat? And I'm not saying moral victories. I mean, he looked good. And would you be surprised to see him on TV next week? And if they did that match, 5 times, Eli Drake doesn't win it every chance. It was a really competitive match. And that's what I really liked about this episode of the Primetime Live, is that it was so back and forth. And I don't think throughout the entire night, for the most part, the guys who won could have gone either way very, very easily. And I really enjoyed the match. Of course, what DK was alluding to is that, Eli Drake kind of feigned the injury, kind of pretended to play possum there. Watts thought he had things wrapped up. He started pre-celebrating, and pre-party before the match was over. Went to go for that forced choke slam, and then of course Eli Drake turned it into the gravy train, like a veteran does, like a wily veteran does. I really think that match was great storytelling. And if NWA Power started tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if Watts was one of the guys that was on that show. That's how good it was, and I think that's how good of a talent Watts is.
Right.
I want to say just real quickly here, this was the second episode, and a lot of what we're saying in general about this could also be said about the first episode, just as far as the wrestling in the ring action was concerned. Again, there were some technical things and some that and they had some timing issues. They had too many matches in the first episode. This was perfect. And so they're putting on top quality matches that, like you said, nobody's looking bad in yet. And if there were rematches next week, you wouldn't be guaranteed the same winners.
Right. Well, I want to jump in and say that that's what you get when you have good wrestling in matches, is that you don't have these kind of weird finishes and overthought storylines where somebody's afraid to do a job to somebody else. They're going to make them look bad. The truth is, and in these first 2 matches for sure, nobody looked bad. No one lost a thing, and that's because these matches were high quality, top notch, great junior heavyweight wrestling followed by great heavyweight wrestling. I mean, you really, up to this point, couldn't ask a whole lot more, especially in today's day and age of wrestling where you just don't get to see a lot of this. Maybe NXT 2 years ago. But right now you're just not seeing this kind of thing. And, I'm inclined to go back and watch it again because it was so good and I really enjoyed it. And I want to give a couple of things in this match that I saw that the last match could have used. Man, some of the Eli Drake's facial expressions, like knowing where the camera is and like not looking at the camera, but knowing it's like right there and making these certain facial expressions, body positioning, like some of the stuff, takes a while to have a seat. And as a wrestling fan and just watching, you may not pick up on these things until you're looking at a wrestler's butt for the whole match. And that's all you can see is their back because they don't know what they're doing. But guys like, man, Eli Drake really is just, and I'm going to come back. I'm going to jump right back on my campaign for Eli Drake as the next opponent for Nick Aldis. They're bringing all these opponents from here and there. And, here we are again. I mean, I feel like it's a replay of even back when I was at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And I was, when I was in the mix for all this, back then I felt like Eli Drake didn't get a fair shake at the title back then. And here we are again, almost 10 years later, and it's the same story. And I know Dave probably is not listening to this, or Billy Corgan or whoever, but come on, guys. You got one of the best heavyweight wrestlers, which is all you can ask for on a roster in the world. And the guy can't even get a title shot. And Nick Aldis is just babysitting that belt. And as far as I'm concerned, Nick Aldis is not the true world champion until he has a feud and beats Eli Drake. You heard it here first. Stop dodging the man.
Now, up next, we get another promo from Priscilla Kelly. I feel like this one was maybe not even good as the first one. When we talked about, like, she looked kind of like beaten before even the match had happened. I really got that vibe from her right here. I was like, man, you quit digging yourself a hole. I don't want to hear you complain about the opportunities that you don't have. I want to hear what you're going to go do to the champion. And I kind of felt like, well, why are you setting yourself up for defeat already? But that promo, thankfully, was over quickly. Then, well, maybe not thankfully, because next we get the Real Money Brothers versus the Friendship Farm. Now, people who are fans from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, they know who Gentleman Jervis is. They know who Sweet Robin Shaw are. They've been around for a while. Real Money Brothers, kind of new to the whole United Wrestling Network. Now, they used to tag team as the Bonus Boys. They have made a few appearances on Arizona TV and Hollywood programming, but this was the first time that we really got to see them in this light. The other thing I want to point out about the Bonus Boys is they're 4-time West Coast Wrestling Connection Tag Team Champions, a 2-time Future Stars of Wrestling Tag Team Champions. They're currently the Arizona Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions, and even were in China to wrestle with the OWE, that's the Oriental Wrestling Entertainment, that was briefly associated with All Elite Wrestling. They were out there and some of those inaugural shows, bringing in some of the American talent to wrestle in China. And these were after, of course, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood was out there. But this was kind of a styles clash. Gentleman Jervis and Sweet Robin Shaw definitely have more of a comedic stylings to it. It wasn't my cup of tea. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have high expectations for this match. And like I said, although Jervis and Shaw have some success in Hollywood, I didn't feel like this match really belonged on a card of this stature. And I've seen Jervis have some really competitive matches in the past, but this wasn't one of them. The Real Money Brothers looked good. I can't wait to see them against some stiffer competition, if you will. DK, I know this wasn't your pick of the litter either, but what did you think about this match?
Wow.
Don't take too much time on this one, DK. Just cut to it.
I won't say it was a bad match. It served the purpose it was put in for, which was primarily to get over, one of the tag teams there.
Yeah, Real Money Brothers.
Yeah. Sweet, whatever his name is, needs to not be in the business. And he certainly never needs to wear those trunks again. Yeah,
I feel like my eyes were violated.
Yeah,
I'm gonna cut you off, DK, because I feel like your energy, your sleep schedule, we got to save you for the next show. So I don't want you to spend too much of your precious energy on this match. If you're gonna get those two guys over, put a couple young dudes out there, squash them, take 3 minutes in this match, give them no offense, put those guys over. They weren't bad. They're kind of a Street Profits ripoff. But who knows who was first? I don't care. But like DK said, on a show like this, it was a little bit of a kind of like a, why is this here? I'm not trying to badmouth them. There's, I'm sure in given situations we could get something better out of both of these teams, but tonight wasn't the night, or this show, this match wasn't it. Honestly, the show gets so much better from here. I feel like, we can go ahead and move on, give them a mulligan, as you'd say in golf, and nobody's show is perfect.
What's kind of funny is right after this, they had Chris Dickinson, who was very critical of David Marquez and Billy Corgan the week before, and he came right out and said, "This is the kind of shit I'm talking about." And I thought, man, I mean,
maybe that was part of the plan.
Well, this is why I said I think it was. I'm not going to say it was bad for what its purpose was, and I think its purpose was the interview after. It probably should, like Kevin said, probably should have been shorter. Probably should have been a little bit more of a squash. But its purpose was for, Dickinson to come out and run his mouth.
Well, and the funny thing is Gary Horn over at This Is the NWA podcast on their show, he said, how are you going to get Chris Dickinson over as a heel when he's pointing out what the fans totally agree with? This match wasn't the best. It wasn't a good use of their time. And I don't mean to be insulting of anybody, but I would have rather had a different match in this situation. But sure. We get a really good match right after this. And that's,
yes,
again, the hallmark of this show is some solid wrestling, and where neither loser or winner looks bad. And in this match, we have Slice Boogie, who, again, I don't know a whole lot about, but he certainly came to prove something tonight or Tuesday night, taking on Carl Fredericks. And I'm going to just say it right now. I think Carl Fredericks is the future of the Primetime Live. You might as well stick the label Mr. Primetime Live on this guy, because he looked so good in this match. A lot of times it seemed like he was just toying with Slice Boogie. And I really feel like Slice Boogie was putting his heart and soul into this match and was giving Carl Fredericks everything he could take. But I think Carl Fredericks could have ended this match at any given moment if he wanted to. And I think this was don't get me wrong, I think it was a great match. And I think Boogie looked really good even in defeat. Carl Fredericks, though, took it to another level. And maybe when we're looking for opponents for Nick Aldis, maybe this is the guy right here who should maybe get that opportunity. Let me hear what you have to say, Modern Day Hero.
I would have the Fredericks is a guy, I would have loved to have gotten to wrestle, just because he would have been one of those guys that would have brought more out of me. I was really impressed with him. I thought Slice Boogie, I thought he lived up to some of the trash that he was talking. You could tell he was a younger guy and he's got some seasoning to do, but he didn't back down. He gave Fredericks, all he had. But like you said, I mean, this was a showcase match for Fredericks, and I've always loved it, and I personally would do this myself. When you've got somebody beat, and you're the better wrestler, it's kind of fun to sit out there and show all the moves you got and give the people what you can do, and maybe torture the other guy a little bit, just because it's part of the way it goes. And sometimes when you're really good and people want to see what you're doing, it does sit out there and give the fans some stuff and show them some of your moves. And I really thought that was a showcase for Fredericks. And sure, I could see him being a competitor or being a main guy. But like I said, Nick Aldis, until you beat Eli Drake, until you give this man his shot, I feel like you've been dodging him since Power. I think you're still dodging him right now. This is straight to you. DK.
In a weird way, I probably came out feeling a little bit better about, Boogie Bob than
Slice Boogie.
Slice Boogie, whatever. it doesn't pass the WrestleMania test. So, but that being said, in some ways, I actually kind of came out feeling better about him than Fredericks, because he did exactly what I was expecting him to do. He came out, he was a strong wrestler, looked good, looked like somebody who had been trained in a New Japan dojo. You could tell he'd been well trained. Whereas Kimbo Slice here looked a little green.
Right.
But he laid in his moves so well and so strong. And I thought he sold pretty good, that whereas I was expecting a more one-sided match, it was a little more competitive than I was expecting, but it looked good in its more competitive nature. And so, like I said, in a lot of ways, I came out liking Slice Boogie almost a little bit better, because Carl did exactly what I was expecting him to do. Slice came out and did more than I expected him to do. He looked good. And here we go again. It was a wrestling match. They went out there. They wrestled.
And that's a great point too. He did more than what I expected too, because I've known of Carl Fredericks. I've seen him in the ring. He had a great match with Ryan Taylor a few months ago back on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, maybe even a year ago. I knew what he was capable of. I did not know what Slice Boogie was capable of, and he did look great. And again, that's going back to that Santino Brothers Wrestling Academy, where so much good talent has come from. I mean, we're talking about NXT's Jake Atlas. We're talking about Ring of Honor's Brody King. We're talking about Heather Monroe from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. We're talking about Tyler Bateman, who's now wrestling in Ring of Honor. And so much great talent has come from the school in Southern California, and they still keep producing great talent. Slice Boogie 2018 was in training, 2019 Rookie of the Year, 2020, and he's having great matches with talents from New Japan Pro Wrestling. I really enjoyed this match, and again, the hallmark of the whole show, nobody looked bad. To DK's point, great wrestling. It was a wrestling match. We didn't have a lot of silly games, silly gimmicks, just silliness. It was serious wrestling, and I appreciated that, and I enjoyed that. Up next, we finally get the main event. We get Thunder Rosa, the continuation of the Destruction Tour, and the woman that stands across her from the ring looks disheveled, uninterested, maybe even lackadaisical. But looks can be deceiving, especially with Priscilla Kelly. She came out there and she put on one hell of a match. Despite what happened, a few years back at the Suburban Wrestling in Southern California, despite some of the missteps and miscalculations that Priscilla Kelly has taken in her career, Tuesday night she looked like a star in the ring with Thunder Rosa. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of women stepping in the ring with Thunder Rosa. I mean, we know what Eva Lise looked like when she stepped in the ring with Thunder Rosa. Priscilla Kelly looked like a star. She looked capable. She played the role. Kevin,
sorry, I don't understand.
My Google Assistant just started talking to me. Kevin, tell me what you thought. What did you think of Priscilla Kelly in this match with the hottest thing in pro wrestling today?
I thought she was tough. That would be the best word I could describe.
Okay.
That would be the best word I could describe. I felt like it's just sometimes hard when someone has so much momentum, like Thunder Rosa, to come in and have somewhat not quite the same momentum and try to build that momentum in the actual match itself. Okay. It's really tough to do. And I was impressed with I'd not really seen her wrestle before, So I was impressed. More than anything with her toughness, her willingness to fight back. As far as just her moveset, athletic ability, athletic prowess, I definitely say Thunder Rosa is on another level in that area. That doesn't mean that she can't get there, but I think, again, this is the wrestling business, and somebody like Priscilla Kelly has a lot of avenues that she can explore in terms of progressing her character and getting a job somewhere. So just because maybe she's not at the level of Thunder Rosa athletically, even in her polish in the ring, doesn't mean that she doesn't have the capabilities to get a good job somewhere. And actually, she has a good job right here at United Wrestling Network. But if she's going to take herself up a notch to the level of a Thunder Rosa and be in matches like this where people believe she's going to actually win, she's going to have to train a little harder, a little more like an athlete. She's going to have to carry herself in the ring and in her prowess a little less like a model and a little more like a fighter. Doesn't mean she can't fight, doesn't mean she's not tough. But I think this was the difference. This was why Thunder Rosa, from the beginning of the match, it was very much like Frederick's match. You knew she was going to win. And it wasn't because she was champion. It's just because, it just wouldn't be believable for anything else to happen. Yes, it was a good main event. Yes, it was hard fought. But there's a difference between going out there and fighting through a match, getting your butt kicked, taking the butt whipping, and then, saying I had a good match, and then taking yourself to that next level where people say, "Oh wow, like she might actually beat Thunder Rosa tonight." And I would say that would be the next step for Priscilla Kelly. I think she has to decide who she's going to be. Am I going to be a kind of valet character type that can wrestle? Like say maybe Zelina Vega would be like someone that comes to mind, like in WWE. She can wrestle, but she's mainly a valet, mainly a character type. Or is she going to be a wrestler, Thunder Rosa, or a Charlotte Flair, or somebody of that nature, where their primary thing is, hey, I'm a wrestler. Maybe I'm attractive. Maybe I have some character. Maybe I have some personality. But when it comes down to it, I'm an elite athlete, and I think that's what she has to make. I feel like she's at a crossroads to decide, because getting an opportunity like this to wrestle someone like Thunder Rosa says that promoters believe that she can be that. She just has to decide that that's what she wants to be. That was like a promo.
That was. Is that pent-up promo aggression? DK, what were your thoughts?
I had no idea who she was, Priscilla Kelly. I didn't. And, when I asked about her, that's when I was basically, hi.
Hey.
Hi.
It's a child. Okay. It's a human.
Now go.
And so the way when people were...
Okay, go. Sorry about that.
No, I lost my thought. Oh, there it is. Anyway, so when I asked, who she was, and, she's basically described based on her one incident that isn't going to get a person over in the wrestling world. So I didn't have a lot of hope going into this. I will say was impressed by what she did. I am not as high on her as a lot of the people who watched the match and just thought I'm a little closer to Kevin. I probably appreciated what she did more than Kevin, but I'm closer to the idea of now, were her promos earlier just to set low bar expectations?
Maybe.
It could be possible. I don't know. And so I would like to see her develop as her. I would really like to see her get somebody else, to tell you the honest truth.
Yeah.
Because you're in the ring with Thunder Rosa, you're probably going to have a good match. If you were in the ring with Ric Flair, you had a good match. But there's a question sometimes as to, well, to take a large personality out there today, Kenny Omega, who was known for his matches with Okada, but a lot of people say those were his best matches, but based on some of his other matches, they attribute how good they were to Okada, not so much to Omega. And so, when I look at her, I go, let's look at the two ladies that wrestled the week before. If you put Priscilla Kelly in the ring with Camille, would you think that it was going to be a competitive match, or that, Kelly had a chance of winning? Might be competitive, but Camille's going to win. Put her in the ring with Heather Monroe. We probably still think Heather's going to win.
Yeah.
And so I think she had a good account of herself. Now, like Kevin said, let's get those promos up to where, talk me into the building. You talk me in. So let's get your promos to where I want to come see you. Let's get you to where when you're in the ring, I want to see you wrestle. I'll be honest, she probably ought to change her wrestling gear.
I can agree with that.
Full moon around most of the match. And it kind of leads back to that. It puts her back in that kind of place of what she's best known for. If you're wanting...
Go ahead.
If you want to be taken more seriously, this is my thing. Maybe she's content with the role she has now. But if you want to be taken more seriously, if you want another match with Thunder Rosa to where I want to see that match with Thunder Rosa, now you got to go out and now you got to prove yourself. Hey, you look good in this match. You look better than I expected in this match. I don't ever need to see this match again. So what are you going to do to convince me otherwise?
I was pleasantly surprised with the match. I was blown away how much better she looked than what I had seen in the past. I'm not saying that anything that you guys are saying is wrong. I'm just saying I was impressed by her fighting spirit, if you will. I feel like she did take a beating. She didn't give up. She was in the ring with someone who is a superior athlete. She's in the ring with someone who's a superior wrestler. And she looked good. Again, the hallmark of the entire show. She looked good even in defeat. But what you're saying is not, I'm not taking away from that either. Maybe she does need to reevaluate her career goals. Maybe she needs to reevaluate what she wants to do next. But I think for Tuesday night, she served a great purpose as an opponent for our women's world champion. I was surprised at her abilities. I was happy that with the match that I saw. And again, it showcased just how good Thunder Rosa is. And let's just compare two things. Thunder Rosa versus Priscilla Kelly, and then Thunder Rosa versus Ivelisse in AEW. I mean, there was night and day difference. And Priscilla Kelly isn't on the AEW roster. She's not, a signed contract, and she put out a better match with our women's world champion than Ivelisse did. And that's my opinion. But that's going to wrap up the show.
Hey, she worked hard. I don't want to take anything away from her. She worked hard.
Sure. Yeah. I agree.
I want to wrap up the show because we are up against it. But again, I think this show was much better than last week's. I think both you gentlemen can agree with that. There were no technical glitches. The pacing was much better. They had enough time to tell the stories in the matches. Next week, we were supposed to have the former women's champion, Allison Kay, take on Serena Deeb. She was exposed to COVID, so she will not be there. Nicole Savoy will be taking her place, which I think is a great replacement. Also on that card, we're going to see the NWA National Heavyweight Championship be defended with Aaron the Shooter Stevens taking on Trevor Murdoch, which is a continuation from NWA Power. Looking forward to that. One of my own personal favorites, Ruby Reyes, will be taking on CC Chanel, who is known from the United Wrestling Network, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. We've got Ray Rosas. He is the United Wrestling Network Hollywood Heritage Champion, Arizona State Champion. He holds the Percy Pringle III Cup. He takes on Pablo Esco, and his debut for Primetime Live. Plus, we're going to see the return of Chris Dickinson, as he's had a lot to say last week, had a lot to say this week. We'll see what he has to say on week number 3. Again, you can order these pay-per-views for $7.99 on Fight TV, or you can get the bundle, the 4-episode package, for $23.99. Get caught up on episode 1 and episode 2. And again, you can always follow us at the Alliance blog. DK, where can they follow you at on social media?
Best place for wrestling-related content is Twitter at DKMFWTX.
And Big Kev, how can they follow you?
You can follow me on Facebook at Kevin Fraiser or Kevin L. Fraiser, or you can follow me on Instagram at Kevin Lee Fraiser, all one word. Lately, I've kind of bowed out of Twitter. Just haven't been doing a whole lot on there. I feel like my life has been better for it. So probably won't find me on there too much as of late. Maybe around December. You might find me a little bit more on there. Anyways, a lot of times it's just social media doesn't run my life. But if you want to find me on Instagram, you can find me on there at Kevin Lee Fraiser, or find me on Facebook.
And again, this is the Alliance Guys podcast. Again, if you want to check out what I do on the week, Tuesday's the pre-party with J Cal. Of course, Friday's the hot tag with Will Martin on Instagram Live. But until next time, we'll see you at the matches. That's a good night now.